Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for July 10th, 2020. On today's episode, we're going to discuss what we've been up to at the water cooler. This is Slash Film Editor-in-Chief Peter Sciretta, and joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film Managing Editor Jacob Hall.
Hello, hello.
Weekend Editor Brad Oman.
Hey, that's me.
Senior Writer Ben Pearson.
Hey, what's going on?
And Writers Hoai-Tran.
Hey, everyone.
And Chris Evangelista.
Hello.
Okay, let's start things off with what we've been doing. Yesterday, I went to the reopening of downtown Disney. This is the shopping district outside Disneyland. Disneyland had hoped to open for the 65th anniversary, which is coming up on July 17th. The governor of California thought that was a bad idea, and Disney obliged. So they did open up their shopping district, much like Universal opened City Walk. And I did attend both of those openings. City Walk was kind of very dead. Not many people were there at the opening of this. The opening of Downtown Disney, there was a lot of annual pass holders, a lot of locals excited that some part of Disney is back in their lives. They're I'll say this, Disney kind of has it under control. They had a lot of the plaid cast members that are usually like the VIP tour guides. They were all over the place, enforcing the social distancing rules. There was not like you couldn't go too many feet with there not being like hand sanitizer stations or hand washing stations. There were lines to get into the stores because they were only allowing like a very limited amount of people in a store at one time. But in all those lines were very socially distant, and we went to the big store. There's like the World of Disney. That's where they have all the exclusive Disneyland merchandise. We're covering it for our YouTube channel, Ordinary Adventures. The video is up right now, and we wanted to see like all all the merchandise that was supposed to come out in the parks for the last 3 months or 4 months since the parks have been closed. We wanted to check out some of that stuff, including the big 65th annual Disneyland Park merchandise. So we had to wait in line for a virtual queue to come back and get into the store. But once you were in the store, like there was not many people, and I felt very safe. I know this sounds cheesy. I'm not sure if any of you guys can relate to this. Maybe Jacob, but just being on Disney property and hearing like the Disney music playing over like the speakers while you walked around, it was somehow comforting. It felt like we weren't living in the post-apocalyptic world that we found ourselves in for a couple hours. So I would say, anyways, check out that video. I'll put a link to that in the show notes if you want to see what it's like at the reopening of Downtown Disney during this pandemic, and how they're handling all of these safety procedures, like temperature checks and stuff like that. Captured all that on camera. I will say this, it is annoying that Disney, both Disney World and Disneyland, they have taken a stance on the mask department, and I'm not one of those people. I am fine wearing a mask, but the mask I have found to be the most comfortable mask is a gator mask. I'm not sure do any of you guys have like a gator mask? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do. That's the one I wear.
Yeah, it's like this circular, I guess like a scarf kind of thing that like goes around your head, and it covers from your nose all the way down to like your neck.
It's the thing that Batman wears in Batman v Superman in the Nightmare sequence. That's exactly what it is. It's the thing he pulls up over his face, even though he's already wearing the Bat mask. That's what it is.
Yeah, well, Disney parks have taken the stance that the mask that people have to wear, the face covering, I guess they call it. They don't call it a mask. They call it a face covering that people have to wear to the parks, have to have a loop that goes over your ears, and thus the gator masks do not qualify as a mask. So when I was trying to go in there, they were like, you can't come in with that mask, sir, or that face covering, sir. Do you need like something else? And they were like giving me, they were willing to give me out like a disposable mask or whatever. But I think this is a shame because, number one, I think those gator masks, if anybody out there is looking for something more comfortable, especially if you have a beard, I found that like beards and masks cause a lot of problems. the gator masks are really good and really a lot more comfortable. But I also find that when I put a mask on my face, because of the beard, it doesn't. It's very hard to get a tight fit on a mask, and you'll often have like parts like on the sides and bottom where there's kind of like air escaping from the mask because it's the face hair on your face is kind of pushing it out a little. So I almost feel like a regular face covering, a regular mask, is not as safe as a gator because a gator like traps in everything. Do you know what I mean? There's no place for it to escape with a gator mask, where there is place for it to escape with mask. Anyways, this is my rant. I know it probably doesn't matter to anybody, but I did want to bring it up because I know probably people out there are looking for mask solutions, and I'd say Google or Amazon gator mask. They even have ones that have uh, filters in them and stuff like that. So anyways, so yeah, check out the video. I'll put the link in the show notes. And while I was doing all this, Ben was moving across the country to Florida.
Yes, after 11 years of living in Los Angeles, my wife and I moved to Florida. Well, she was there for I think 8 or 9 years. I went out a little bit early, but anyway, yes, we're back in Florida now. We have a lot of family that's still in this area. Basically, we're pretty close to like where I was born, actually, which is kind of weird to be like so close to this part of my life. I spent the first 20 something years of my life in Florida. So yeah, now we're back, and we moved from an apartment in Los Angeles to a house in Florida, and that jump has been a huge life change, but I have gotten used to it very quickly. I think I'm much more comfortable here than I was in LA. So yeah, it's a big change, but I guess now I'm every time I step outside, I run the danger of becoming the next Florida man. So I have to be careful with what I do, or else I could end up on a news broadcast or something.
I wouldn't worry about that, Ben. But what I would worry about is all the people in Florida. The cases are on the rise. Are you more cautious while you're there?
Yeah, I mean, my wife and I have been taking this very seriously from the very beginning. So our level of caution has been, I would say, pretty similar throughout this entire experience. I mean, driving across the country in a U-Haul had sort of opened my eyes to the varying levels of seriousness with which vast swaths of this country are taking the coronavirus. So yeah, in Florida, it's not what I would call optimal, the way that everybody is handling this here. I will say that it's been a mixed bag. There are several establishments. Having just moved into a house, I've had to go to Home Depot a bunch of times, and it's really like half and half, it seems like, from my experience. Basically being out in public anywhere, I haven't eaten indoors at any restaurants, but like going to pick stuff up for pickup and takeout and stuff like that, it seems like, yeah, really half the people are wearing masks and half aren't. So I'm just trying to minimize my my trips outside of my house as much as possible, and hoping that people sort of wise up and maybe, I mean, it's a horrible thing to say, but maybe some of these numbers will actually scare people into behaving in a manner that will help society at large. So not that I wish harm on anyone by any means, but hopefully, I don't know, hopefully this is the night is darkest just before the dawn moment. So I'll try to be optimistic and think about it like that.
I can't even imagine moving during this time, and because there's so many things you need to buy. There's so many things. Like, I guess you guys probably unpacked everything yourself, so you didn't have any movers helping you out.
That's correct. Yeah, we packed up our whole place. We spent like weeks and weeks actually slowly packing up our 2-bedroom apartment in LA, which was nice to have that much time, because we actually closed on this house at the beginning of the year, and we were planning on sort of being back and forth for a little while, like living here for a little bit and living back in LA for a little bit, and keeping both places for just a little while until we could fully make the transition. But obviously the pandemic sort of threw a wrench into those plans. So we had this house just sort of sitting empty for months on end, and we decided, if we're going to be cooped up inside, we might as well be cooped up inside the house that we're paying for instead of this apartment that that is too small for us. So
I don't want to focus too much on you and your move, Ben, but I'm wondering, like, what has been the hardest thing because of this pandemic in the moving process? Like, what have you found like the most restricting?
I mean, the biggest bummer of the whole thing is that, like, a big part of the reason that we moved back was to be closer to family, and we have seen some of our family members since, actually all of the ones that live around here since we've been back. But I can't give my mom a hug, and like just the simple things like that. I just don't.
Yeah.
That's the hardest thing. Moving during the pandemic is rough, but like the the social restrictions that come with it are really the most difficult thing, because frankly I spend most of my time inside anyway. So it's just when you want to go out and see your family that you sort of moved here to see, it just sort of sucks that you gotta still be on your guard and make sure everybody's taking it seriously.
Yeah, for sure. Well, while you were moving, Ben was traveling. I mean, Brad was traveling. Brad, tell us about it.
Yes, I was traveling. That's it.
Where were you traveling to, Brad?
So, my girlfriend's sister and her husband just are moving. They just moved from Utah to Kansas City because my her brother-in-law is going to medical school, and that's where they're going. And so they just moved out there right before the holiday weekend, and they actually helped my girlfriend Brittany move out here to me. They drove out with her, and they helped us get our house all arranged and stuff moved around and everything. And so she wanted to be able to go help them move. They didn't really have as much to do or as much stuff to move. They made it a little bit easier on themselves. So they were relatively finished by the time we got there. But it was nice just to be able to hang out because it was 4th of July weekend. And it had just been a while since we had seen them, and were able to like just relax. And so it was really mellow, like we didn't have to worry about like going anywhere or try and see all these tourist attractions or anything like that. It was just, relaxing and, cooking at home and just kind of just enjoying the time, to hang out and not, still kind of, obviously social distancing and stuff like that. But and everyone had been safe, and we wear masks when we did go out to like pick up food and that kind of thing. But it was just good to go somewhere else for a while. It's there's been no traveling, and it was an 8-hour drive, which isn't too bad actually. Like it is a long time to spend in a car, but it didn't really feel like it was a long time. We kind of enjoyed it, just getting out of the house and not having to do the normal things that we do every day. So yeah, that's I went down there, and we just got back yesterday, and it was just, like I said, nice to get away.
Very cool. HT, what have you been up to?
Speaking of getting away and doing socially distanced activities, I went to my first drive-in theater. Well, technically, it was a pop-up drive-in. I've never been to a drive-in theater before, and I've always wanted to go, especially with all of just the with them being the only movie venues that are actually running right now. But there haven't really been any in the Northern Virginia area where I grew up, so I never really was able to go to one even as a kid. But amid the pandemic, a pop-up drive-in was hosted at Tyson's Corner Mall, which is the big mall near me, and I went there with my parents, and we saw Back to the Future, and it was great. I mean, we've talked plenty of times about Back to the Future, a perfect movie, and it was funny because I remembered more about Back to the Future than my parents, and I was quoting a lot of lines to them, and they were just like, what happened in this movie? And they're like, we saw this in theaters like 30 years ago. And I was like, I can tell. So yeah, that was a fun little sort of excursion, and it was cool. It was like my first time doing this sort of pandemic style pop-up drive-in thing. So like they had, for the audio, if you couldn't hear through like the speakers they had like a radio channel which you could tune your car into and listen to it from within your car. So that was pretty cool. Technology nowadays really just helps just the whole living situation right now. But
What did you think of like the presentation and experience? Is it like something you would do again if the world were normal?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's just really fun. It's just kind of, it's like a more gaseous version of a screen on the green. So yeah, I would do it again. But I would definitely I want to try again, but it's all sold out for the next couple months, so I don't know if I'll be able to see any more. But I really wanted to. They were showing the Tim Burton Batman. I really wanted to go see it again, but that one's already sold out. So it's too bad. But I'm glad I got to have that experience at least.
Yeah. What else have you been up to?
Oh, I discovered that I do in fact have HBO Max. So it's been, how long has it been since it launched? It's been like a month, I think. But
Probably.
yeah, I have I'm under Verizon Fios, and I think at the beginning when it first launched, didn't HBO Max didn't have that deal with Verizon yet, and somehow secretly that deal did come through because now I'm able to access it, and I was very excited just to peruse through the vast library that is HBO Max. But I got kind of overwhelmed by how many things there were, and ended up just rewatching a lot of my favorite episodes of Doctor Who. But I'm happy that I have it, and I can start watching, I don't know, more things. More streaming
Wait,
services.
how did you discover that you had it? I'm very curious.
Well, I was just jealous that everyone was able to watch things on HBO Max, so I was just checking it out and seeing how much the subscription was, and like thinking about just getting a subscription. And then I decided to just test out on a whim whether my login would work, and I was like, wow, it does work. Okay, so it just happened. I'm very lucky that I didn't go and buy it.
I'm wondering how many people out there listening probably have HBO Max and don't even know they have it like you did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I'm wondering if that's like a big portion of people.
It probably is, because the rollout has been very confusing, and the HBO Max has, while they've been good about announcing their new titles, they haven't really been good about like telling people or informing people who actually has it.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to what we've been reading. Jacob, what have you been reading this week?
Yeah, I read the new book by Max Brooks. Goodness, I know it's De-Evolution or Devolution. I'm gonna say De-Evolution because it's easier for me to say. But Max Brooks wrote World War Z, the original novel, over 10 years ago. And he's written things since then, some comics and like a Minecraft spin-off novel. But this is his first like full-fledged, like proper novel since World War Z. And I think World War Z is one of the best horror books ever written. I think it's incredible. I think it's so much better than the film version ever was. So I had kind of high expectations here. And the book mostly lived up to them for me. This is a really entertaining, often very scary and exciting book. Like World War Z, which is presented as a series of interviews with zombies, people who survived the zombie apocalypse. This one is also sort of a found document thing, where it's a combination of interviews with people reacting to the event, and the event is depicted in a woman's journal as her isolated community in Washington is under siege by a family of Bigfoots, or Big Feet, however you want to say it, Sasquatches, abominable snowmen, you pick your word. And it is, what I like about it, and what I like about World War Z, is that Brooks clearly does his homework here, and he clearly says, okay, what are the actual social and economic ramifications of a group of people being attacked by a Bigfoot? And how would people in 2020 react? And what would be, what would the reaction be from people in this day and age with technology on hand, with the knowledge we have? What would the ramifications be? And in the case of this book, basically just said that the Bigfoot family is pushed forward by a natural disaster in the area, which means that this already isolated community has lost internet, has lost communication with the outside world, and they're forced to make do with what they have. In some ways, it plays out like The Martian, in that these people must survive in this area with like limited resources, but also has them being surrounded by monsters. And it reminded me a lot of of Michael Crichton's best stuff, but written in sort of a found footage or found document style. I really enjoyed it. Not as much as World War Z, but I read it in one sitting. I had a great time with it. I know Chris also read this. We talked about it on Slack. Chris, you did not like this.
Yeah, I like some of the writing. I like the, I like that homework thing you're talking about. Like, the disaster that takes place is like a volcano erupts, and I found all that stuff like really interesting. The problem I had with it is every single character in this is just very annoying, and some of them are supposed to be annoying, but then there are characters who are clearly supposed to not be annoying. Like, there's this old woman character in the community who like understands what's going on before everyone else, and she starts preparing for what's going to happen. And it's clear to me that she's supposed to seem like this really interesting character, and I could not stand her. And I spent the whole book being like, I can't wait until a Bigfoot kills this woman. And eventually the characters slowly get killed off one by one, and I liked that, but I really did not care for the book in whole. I love World War Z, so I was looking forward to this, but the writing is fine. I just did not like the characters.
Yeah, I disagree. The characters never bothered me in the way that they bothered Chris, but this is very much a teach his own situation, because I'm not going to say Chris is incorrect about this.
I have a very low tolerance for people, so just people in general. I just have a very low tolerance for them, so yeah, I'm biased there.
But I think you'll agree that the film version that's already been picked up by Legendary has a lot of promise, because it reads like a really exciting movie.
Oh yeah, I think if this ends up being a well-made movie, it'd probably be like the best Bigfoot movie ever. It's because there aren't that many Bigfoot movies to begin with, but if they nail the horror elements, it'll be like a legitimately scary, disturbing Bigfoot movie. So that might be cool.
Yeah, it's really good. That's Devolution by Max Brooks.
Do they have a director for that?
No, not yet. All they've announced that Legendary is doing it. Interestingly, in the acknowledgments, Max Brooks thanks the head of Legendary Pictures for selling him, or letting him have back his movie pitch turned into a novel, which he then probably sold back as a movie pitch. So it's interesting.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, Brad, what have you been reading?
I'm normally not in the reading section because I am illiterate, but I learned to read, and here I am. And you can do it too.
Well, this book is just like all images, right?
Yeah, it's a picture book, and it's a damn good one. Let me tell you. No, so I started reading The Office, the untold story of the greatest sitcom of the 2000s, an oral history. If you can't tell, this is a book about The Office, the show that was on NBC, and it's very simple because it's just a collection of interviews with the cast and creators and people who had a key part in bringing the show to life, and it runs through it in a chronological way, broken down from the inception of the series through various episodes and production hiccups and that kind of thing. And as a big fan of The Office, I'm always watching the reruns when they're on Comedy Central. I'll throw it on in the background on Netflix from time to time. I've seen the entire series several times over. And it's just a really great fun read. There's so many cool tidbits in here about. I'm in the middle of it right now, so I haven't finished yet. But there's just awesome bits of trivia in here. Like I found out that they tried to offer the role of Michael Scott to Paul Giamatti and Philip Seymour Hoffman, and they both turned it down because it was at a time when TV was kind of looked down upon by movie stars, and they weren't interested in whatsoever. And the list of other people they considered for Michael Scott is even crazier. People like Steve Buscemi and stuff were talked about, and there's casting lists for a lot of the other characters too. And it's just really interesting to hear how it all came together and how much kind of backlash there was at first, and how much work had to go into convincing people it was even a good idea, since the UK one was already so respected and revered that they figured America would screw it up like they did every other, almost every other remake of a British TV series. But yeah, if you're a fan of The Office, it's definitely worth picking up and reading through it.
Philip Seymour Hoffman would have been weird. That would have been crazy.
Yeah, it's he's such a good actor, and I know he would have been great at it, but I can't imagine him doing some of the stuff that Steve Carell did. Like a lot of Michael Scott, I think, is very much ingrained in Steve Carell as a person, and so I think it would have made the vibe different. But like, because I think of how Philip Seymour Hoffman has been in some of his comedic roles, like in Along Came Polly and Twister and stuff, and mixing that with this kind of charm that he does inherently have. But it's tough to imagine him in that role.
Okay, let's move on to what we've been watching. This past week on Disney Plus, they released Hamilton. This is the filmed version of the stage musical. I think a bunch of us watched this. Ben talked about it last week. I'll start because I had not really read much about Hamilton. I had kind of stayed away from it. I had not listened to any of the music. The only musical number I had heard was, I think, the opening number that was featured on an episode of Some Good News, where the cast kind of reprised over Zoom that musical number. So I really didn't know much of what to expect. I think this is brilliant. Hot take, guys. Hamilton is brilliant. It's I think this is a seminal piece of art here, and it's I absolutely love the music. I was not expecting. I honestly had no idea how I didn't expect it to be so nonstop. I didn't know that the whole movie was gonna that there wasn't gonna be parts that weren't musical. Um, and not only is it nonstop, but it is like so fast. Like the music is so fast. I looked up and like the words per minute is so much higher than the average Broadway musical that if you put that many words per that as many words as there were in Hamilton the musical, if you had adapted that to the speed of a normal song of a Broadway musical, this musical would be 6 hours long. But some of these songs are just like so fast paced. I wouldn't say there's a criticism there, but I will admit that after the first song, I asked Kitra if we could turn on the subtitles because I felt like I was missing some of the words, and I feel like that is a benefit of the home viewing experience because I feel like if I was in an audience far away from the stage, now in this film version, you get to see some close ups and you can read the lips and whatever. You get more to it, but I think also I got something more to it because I was able to watch it with subtitles, so I missed less. And I love the casting. I love that, aside from the stylistic approach that this musical takes, which is probably the most obvious thing to talk about with Hamilton. I love that, we have like the future of America telling the story of how it was founded and representing the white past with the POC color cast. It's such a refreshing musical, and so the stylistically how they present the story with hip hop and just just the rhythm and tone of the approach is in the execution of the music alone makes it one of the best musicals of all time. I would say I'm going to give you 3 criticisms. These might be nitpicks, but my one minor complaint is that at its core, this musical is still kind of glorifying a story of the founding fathers. And while I love that it's so stylistically different than what we've gotten before in that area, I wish it had approached the characterizations of the story in a different way. Like, I wish it addressed the problem of, these folk heroes of our past, our founding fathers being, also slave owners, and there being problems there. And I feel like, I don't know, I kind of wish it had gone into that a little somehow. But the other one I think none of you are going to agree with, and that is, the stage design is so simple and elegant. It's a minimal production design. It's like a bare bones black box theater, and I get it. They're going for a backdrop that's like how the country, like it's like the rough foundations of in which this country was built. Or at least that's my reading of it. But I honestly was not impressed by, I feel like they could have had some better changes of scenery, and I don't know. I know that's not what they were going for, and I appreciate what they were going for, but I kind of wish there was more production in that aspect. And the other criticism I have is that I wasn't really impressed by the production of it as a film. It captures the performance, but doesn't do really anything special on top of that. Like, they filmed, from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, they filmed 2 performances with crowds, and then they had one day of them with cameras on the stage, so they got some more close-ups and stuff like that. I feel like they could have done more here. I honestly, this is not. I feel like this is my biggest nitpick because this film, more than adequately captures the stage performance, but I just kind of wish that it was more than what it was, if that makes sense. Oh, and one last thing, and this is another thing that I think people aren't going to agree with here, but Lin-Manuel Miranda is a genius. He's an amazing songwriter. I can't believe he created this whole thing, but I don't think he's a great actor. So, before I hand this over to you guys, I know I'm talking way too long, but I will say that some of my favorite moments, I'll be very brief and broad here so that I'm not spoiling anything for anybody, but I like the rewind thing. I like rap battle debates. I like I like that this play is about legacy, and there's like characters almost breaking the third wall at time and looking back at the stories in third person after the fact. I love King George is not something I expected to love, and he's so good. And Jefferson, the guy that plays Jefferson, and so many duels back in the day. So many duels. Okay, I'll let someone else talk now. Jacob, what did you think of Hamilton?
I watched it several times. I've listened to the soundtrack a lot. And I think Hamilton is the seminal piece of American art of the 21st century so far.
Yeah.
I really strongly believe that. I as a Broadway musical, it's beautiful. As a adaptation of history, like I've read the book it's based on, Ron Chernow's Alexander Hamilton, and it's actually a like startlingly close adaptation of that book. It's 1,000-page long biography. In fact, there's crazy stuff in that book that you couldn't put in Broadway musicals because people wouldn't believe it. I do disagree with one thing you said, Peter, which I do think I think it takes to task certain characters pretty well on some of their flaws. Like I think I know Ron Chernow's book and the musical both call out Thomas Jefferson early and often for his hypocritical views and being a slave owner. I do wish the musical was harsher toward George Washington. I know Lin-Manuel Miranda addressed this in Hamilton book about how there are elements in there that hint toward it, but it's a complicated issue, and one that I'm glad people are talking about now. Not enough to cancel the show by any means, but I do think there's more in there, especially since the main character, was in real life a very staunch abolitionist himself. So I think there's a conversation to be had there, but I do think that calling out certain characters, especially Thomas Jefferson, often enough is a bold move considering he's an iconic figure. But like I said, I think I do agree with you about Washington there. But yeah, I think Daveed Diggs and Leslie Odom Jr. are especially brilliant here. I think Lin-Manuel Miranda is better to give him credit for, Peter. But other than that, I think it speaks for itself. I love history. I love musicals. I think the wordplay here is so dense and so clever that every time I listen to it, I find new rhymes and new turns of phrase to appreciate. I think it's straight up brilliant. And I understand the criticism you have about the filmmaking. Ben had the same one. For me, it's like, do I want a Hamilton film or do I want footage that captures the stage version, which is the presentation which I'll never get to see because I can't afford it. And I think at the end of the day, I think I prefer the latter. But HT, I think you were also a Hamilton fan before this movie, correct?
Yes, I was. And I actually had seen it before with the national tour. I'd never seen it with the original cast before. And I had liked the national tour performance of it. I had listened to the soundtrack and loved the soundtrack before. And but I'm the kind of person who actually likes to listen to the soundtrack for the first time while watching the musical itself. And I think my high expectations of listening to the soundtrack beforehand kind of set me up for some disappointment watching the national tour. But those expectations were definitely exceeded with the filmed version with the original cast, because just when you're listening to the soundtrack, you get so attached to the original cast performances and all their nuances and ticks, and it's just done so brilliantly, and you can really just imagine and see that entire performance just from listening to the soundtrack on its own. And almost everything else kind of pales in comparison when you see it performed by any other cast, and just seeing it for the first time with that original cast in this film form, which really gives you the best seat in the house, was just just blew me away. I was so excited to just like to see it with the original cast. And I had, my criticism with the seeing it on the national tour cast. I saw them at the Kennedy Center, like I don't know, 3 years ago, and I think that my expectations were set up because I really love Leslie Odom Jr.'s performance in the songs, and I always felt like the Burr that I saw on stage had been a little bit too Weasley, but seeing Leslie Odom Jr. in the original performance, it just brings out how brilliant and how amazing and talented he is. And he really brings up that whole Salieri to Hamilton's Mozart dynamic that I really loved about listening to the soundtrack too. And I just think that seeing that original cast give it their all and having like in mind that soundtrack that I listened to over and over again, it just kind of gives this whole big, richer, fuller experience. And in the close-ups as well, like I had high expectations for like this, what was it, well, how did the Disney Plus describe it? It was like something that
I think
sounded
they
like
said it was something a live capture,
Yeah,
like
live
pushing
capture.
the boundaries of live
Yeah,
capture.
yeah. I think that they were just like making it using very fancy PR language because it was just basically a very basic filmed version of the musical, which I appreciate because I got to see them up close, and I do like that. I don't know if this is the case with the original cast performance, and Chris and Ben, I think you've seen the original cast, so you might be able to tell me about this. But seeing it on the Disney Plus like version, the film, I feel like there were so many more like small glances and gestures and bits of staging that really added to the whole performance of it, and like especially with Hamilton and Angelica's little interactions. I really, really love that. And even the sort of background not staging, but like the blocking of all the people, even when they're not actually performing, added to that storytelling as well. Ben, I think you saw it with the original cast.
I didn't. I saw it in LA, and the original cast was not there. I don't remember the names of the people that I saw it, but I'm like, part of me is on board with what you're saying, and I'll make this short because I want other people to be able to talk. But there's a moment in the story of tonight where the camera lingers for a second on this shot of John Lawrence like staring longingly into Hamilton's eyes. That, there's this huge Tumblr community of people who are like hardcore shipping those two characters, and like there may have actually been a complicated affair, kind of maybe a little bit more than brotherly love relationship between those two characters in real life. And I think the movie, by holding that shot and really, pushing in on that close up and giving you access to see that expression that you're talking about, that you probably wouldn't have seen even if you were sitting in the audience that night. I think that's the kind of stuff I wish there was more of in this. But I'll shut up for a minute and let you finish and let other people talk.
No, it's okay. I mean, I feel like there were enough of those in this filmed version that I was able to appreciate and get like a new experience out of Hamilton that I hadn't already had from listening to the soundtrack thousands of times. But I really enjoyed this. And going to your first point, Peter, about how this how Hamilton doesn't really take to task as much the actual flaws and the actual sort of sins, I guess, of the founding fathers. I feel like, in a sense, it's part of Hamilton being a relic of the Obama era in which it came out. That sort of positive, optimistic politics from which it was born. And I feel like that part of it is what feeds into that sort of, if we do colorblind casting, then that kind of smooths over some of the harsher edges of history that this story is telling. But I do think that we're now seeing this from this like modern, this more contemporary sort of times, and being almost more like cynical about this kind of stuff. That's kind of criticism which actually had been levied against Hamilton when it first came out is more clear now. But I do think that despite it being kind of still a relic of that Obama era politics from which it came out, it still is such a timeless and seminal, as you said, work of art. It really is just like, I know people have said this before and it sounds so cheesy when people say it. It really is like the American modern day Shakespeare of our time. And it's just like, it's amazing to see it, to be here at the time, be in the room where it happens. When Hamilton came out.
How lucky we are to be alive right now.
Yes.
I think it's impossible to be hyperbolic about this.
Mhm.
This, musical, I guess. Chris, what did you think?
Oh God, let's just move on. I feel like everyone said so much already. I'm the last person to say anything. It's a good show. I saw it twice on Broadway, and that's not because I'm rich. It's because I maxed out my credit cards because, sure, I have debt, but one day I'll be dead and I won't have to worry about that debt. So I saw this twice on Broadway, once with the original cast, once with the replacement cast. And I obviously had an idea of what I was getting into watching this, but even like knowing what I knew beforehand, even like knowing all the songs by heart and all that stuff, this still really, really impressed me. Some of the versions of songs included here are better than the versions that are on the cast recording. Like the version of Satisfied here is just phenomenal. It's beyond phenomenal. It shocked me at how good it was. And yeah, I mean, obviously there are criticisms we have about the play. I do think it's a lot more critical than people are giving it credit for. I feel like every male character, at least, even Hamilton, is very, very flawed. The only character who doesn't seem flawed is Washington, and I do agree they do kind of clean up his backstory a bit, but everyone.
But I feel like Hamilton is even kind of glorified, even though
he has an affair. He cheats on his very loving wife, and he could easily avoid being killed in a duel, but he does it anyway because he's such
he's a classic tragic hero in the sense that everything that raises him up at the beginning of the first act is what is basically the cause of his doom in the second act.
All the 90% of the problems that befall Hamilton are really of his own making. Like he's his own worst enemy here. And I get it that it could be more critical, but I think for a nearly 3-hour show with so many songs, and I think it does a fairly good job. I still I like the way this was filmed. I loved the close-ups because even though I had seen it on Broadway, I noticed stuff I hadn't seen on the stage show. That said, I really look forward to an eventual real film version. Like my dream film version of this is everything looks historically accurate except the cast. I want this to look like Barry Lyndon, but with the Hamilton cast and the songs, obviously. And Jesus Christ, please do not let Tom Hooper direct the eventual movie. I know someone somewhere in Hollywood is like, yeah, we can get Tom Hooper. Don't do that. Just please get a good filmmaker who knows what they're doing to direct this.
Digital powdered wig technology.
Yes.
Guys, since most of us have seen this now, the one thing from Ron Chernow's book from real life, from history, that I wish was in this show, and it's not because I think it would have added an impossible to ignore wrinkle to the entire plot, is that in real life, when Angelica Schuyler was living in Europe, she became best friends with Thomas Jefferson while he was ambassador to France, and she remained best friends with Hamilton and Jefferson until they both died. So imagine that version of the story where Hamilton knows that.
Wow.
I also I want to mention Jonathan Groff. I appreciated the spittle that you could see in the close-ups of his stuff as King George, which I thought was just an amazing choice on his part. But then I was reading afterwards that no, he just he spits when he sings, so it's just at least according to him.
That's just it wasn't away, man. Don't sit in the front row. You can spit on. I've been spit on at a show before. It happens.
But I just love that it's dripping down his chin as he's performing those pieces. It's great. Anyways, okay. Are we ready to move on from Hamilton, or does anybody have anything else to say?
I have 1,000 more things to say, and so much trivia about what was left out from history. But I'm going to stop there because we're already 45 minutes into this show.
Yeah. I'm sorry, guys, that we went so long in this, but it's rare that we get a new thing that all of us have seen these days. So, and something as good as this. right? Like, it is. Let me ask you guys: if the end of the year was right now, would this be the best quote unquote film that you've seen this year?
I'm not sure if I can. I'm not sure if I can qualify it as a film, as a
No,
film
that's kinda how
play.
I feel too.
If we're counting it as a film, it would probably be in like my top 10, but it's not the best I've seen.
It is a filmed version of a great play. I cannot qualify it as a movie. I can't do it as much as I love it. I can't do it.
See,
So
I feel
at
like
the end of the year, you wouldn't include it at all.
Honorable mention is saying like, hey, probably the best thing I saw this year, but not a movie.
See, I feel like the fact that it has camera angles and stuff makes it a movie. I feel like if it was like one steady shot, and there are a lot of Broadway musicals, they haven't been released, but they're filmed like that, where they set the camera up at the back of the theater and they just film it for posterity, basically. If it was that, I would say, oh, this isn't a movie. But the fact that they did like takes and stuff, like they didn't just shoot one performance, they shot multiple performances, and then they reshot the close-ups for like an empty house, basically, just to get those close-ups. I feel like that kind of makes it a movie, but I also see the argument that it isn't a movie. So yeah, I don't really know.
I don't know. There have been other Broadway musicals that have been filmed in this manner before too. So would they be considered movies? Like
No, they won't.
exactly. I don't think that it's a movie.
But
Sorry.
but
I'm
they
on the side
wouldn't
it's
be
not a
in
movie.
consideration. They wouldn't be in consideration for best of the year, so it was never like a thing to talk about in the past, right? Or am I wrong? Like, is there a filmed Broadway musical before this that would have been considered for like best of that year? Okay, let's move on because we got a lot of stuff to cover today. What have I been watching? I finally got to see Palm Springs. This is from the Lonely Island Gang. It's on Hulu, and this is a like how Ben.
Yeah.
I know you love this.
Yeah.
How much of this do you reveal? Like the premise, I feel like is in the trailer.
It
Right?
is. I would just say for anybody who has Hulu and doesn't know the premise of Palm Springs, just go watch it right now. Like pause this episode and watch it because it's on Hulu right now, and then you'll have much more enjoyment. But I think you can reveal the premise here, Peter, because as you mentioned, it is in the marketing. I just it's one of those things that I feel like the less you know about this movie, the better going in.
Yeah, so okay, skip ahead a minute if you don't want to know anything about Palm Springs, but I'm literally gonna not go into anything that's deeper than the first 20 minutes. So this movie stars Andy Samberg, and he's playing a character who is trapped on this one day where his friends are getting married, his girlfriend is in the wedding and they're in Palm Springs, and it is like Groundhog Day where the day is repeating itself over and over again. I think we're getting a lot of this time loop stuff recently in both movies and TV, and I think what's kind of pushing these things forward is that we're able to do things beyond what we did in Groundhog Day. Like, this skips the whole discovery period. It starts at a point where he's already been in this loop for a while. And so I don't want to go too far into the premise, but I think there's some clever stuff there. This is a fun romantic comedy. There's some surprising layers that keep on peeling as you go along. It's cute. It's very good. I don't think I loved it quite as much as you, Ben, but it would still, at this point in time, it would be in my top 10 of the year. But I'm not sure if that's saying much because there hasn't been much that's come out this year. So, but I would say go see it. If you have Hulu, why not? Right? So, no one else has seen this other than me and Ben?
Chris saw it and talked about it recently, right? Like on a recent episode of The Water.
Oh, did he? Okay. Yeah. So go check that out if you want to hear what Chris thought. I also, the other thing I saw this week was this miniseries, a 3-part miniseries. It's called Quiz, and this aired in the UK, and here in the United States, it aired on AMC, and it's based on a true story. It tells the story of this couple who went on the British version of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, which, as it turns out, is the first version of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. We stole it from them, or we licensed it from them, and they were accused of cheating the show. And actually, they were accused of cheating the show. But it's interesting because they claim to this day that they weren't. So the story is being told in kind of I guess, wish-washy kind of way, where you're seeing both sides of things. It is also kind of an origin story of sorts, because you kind of find out how, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire was created. It was originally going to be this TV show called Cash Mountain, just like the worst name ever. I think this is an interesting story, and it's also a story I don't feel like a lot of people have heard about, especially in America, because all this happened the day that this whole thing went down was the day before September 11th. So in a way, it's kind of like that whole Monopoly thing, where like bigger world events were happening around the time, and we probably weren't hearing too much about it. They cheated, or they were accused of cheating the show using a system of coughing. It's interesting because it's not really a big part of this miniseries, but there was like this whole syndicate that was cheating British game shows, and I guess the syndicate was, I don't want to say cheating, they were trying to help each other game the system. I don't think they ever were caught quote unquote cheating, and that syndicate was accounted for more than 10% of all the winnings on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. So they talk a little bit about that. It's interesting. They go into the court case. The defense in the court case is a lot of fun. I will say though, the cinematography feels very TV. It feels like a TV movie from like 10 years ago. So I don't know, which is strange because I think this is directed by, who is it directed by? Stephen Frears. So I don't know. I would expect a little bit more from the cinematography of the show, but I would say check it out. I saw it on AMC On Demand, so it's available there, and it's worth watching. I wouldn't say it's like exceptional in any way, but it's an interesting story, and that is called Quiz. Jacob, what have you been watching?
I watch a lot of stuff, so I'm going to go as fast as I can while trying to be as clear as I can. I watched Session 9, which is streaming on Netflix. This is a horror film from Brad Anderson, who went on to make The Machinist and other films. It's unique because it's shot in an actual mental hospital, an abandoned mental hospital, and they use sort of lo-fi digital cameras so they can get into tight spaces and use low light to like really capture how gritty and ugly it is. And it follows a cleanup crew who are there to remove asbestos, and they may or may not be going insane, and there may or may not be a haunted asylum, and things go very badly for them. And it has a very, very good final stretch after a very slow burn hour or so. I like Session 9 a lot. I think it's very creepy. I know Chris is also a fan. Chris, everything to say about Session 9?
It is a great movie, and it's also apparently the movie that Brad Anderson will be chasing his entire career, because nothing he's made since has been quite as good.
That is true. Anyone else here Session 9? No. Okay, moving on. Session 9, Netflix. It's good. Also on Netflix.
I do have one thing to note.
Oh, yeah?
Our former editor, Russ Fisher, worked on the art department of that movie.
Oh, really?
So it's an interesting bit of trivia.
Oh,
yeah.
Good. That's really cool to know. I did not know that. Russ, send us your Session 9 trivia, please. I watched Lockout on Netflix, the Guy Pearce 2012 sci-fi action movie that I and the rest of the internet have called Space Jail, the film that famously lost in French court when John Carpenter sued the filmmakers over them ripping off Escape from New York. It's really Escape from New York in space. It's not very good. I've seen it twice. I think I wanted to see if I liked it more with time. The answer is no, not really. Guy Pearce is having a great time. Like a super muscled Guy Pearce playing Kurt Russell in Escape from New York, in a rip-off Escape from New York. I wish it was better. They clearly built one hallway and reused it like 6 times for the space set. It's about Guy Pearce is in space trying to rescue the president's daughter from space jail. It sounds better than it is. It looked awful in 2012. The visual effects were bad almost a decade ago. They're worse now. But that's Lockout. You should watch maybe 5 minutes of it to see Guy Pearce having some fun. Otherwise, you can skip it. Also on Netflix, a Netflix original, I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House. This is the second film from Osgood Perkins, who made The Black Coat's Daughter and made Gretel and Hansel, that came out earlier this year. I really love Black Coat's Daughter. I think it's one of my favorite horror films of the past decade. And the Pretty Thing Lives in the House is ambitious. It is weird. I'm glad I watched it. It is borderline impossible for me to recommend it to you. It is too slow, too honestly kind of boring to like say like to be enthusiastic. But if you want an adventurous odd horror movie that emphasizes tone and like a feeling of uneasiness over plot, scares, character, dialogue, anything else, maybe give it a shot. It is only like 84 minutes, but it's extremely hard for me to like be enthusiastic about this film, especially knowing that he would come back and with better results with Gretel and Hansel, and I know we can do because of Black Coat's Daughter. But this is definitely an interesting thing. I don't know why Netflix saw value in it, but I'm glad it exists. That is I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House on Netflix. Going on from art house horror to trash horror, I did a double feature of The Burning and Sleepaway Camp, which are both now streaming on the Shudder streaming service. These are both 1980s slasher films set in summer camps. You know, the whole wave kick off by Friday the 13th. The Burning is infamous because it is the first Miramax film. It is Harvey and Bob Weinstein's first movie, which adds this really nasty undercurrent to watching it these days. But it is rightfully a cult favorite because it really is a really nasty and often very fun, throwback horror film. Not even a throwback; it's an original horror film. This is kind of B slasher movie that people these days are chasing and trying to emulate. It's full of nasty gore and weirdness, and it is retrograde in most ways. But as a like snapshot of low budget horror cinema in the 80s, there's a lot to appreciate here. And there's a scene on a raft where a bunch of kids on a raft approach a canoe that they think is empty, and something very bad happens that is rightfully famous, and it's makes the whole thing worth watching. Sleepaway Camp came out a few years later. It's a funnier film, both intentionally and unintentionally. It is about a series of murders at a summer camp, with a twist ending that you will not see coming, even though it's very famous if you know the horror genre. It is about as politically incorrect as you can get, and not in ways that I can appreciate, but that makes it in a weird way even more a must-watch because it's such a time capsule. Don't watch it if you want sexual politics that are in any way enlightened or thoughtful, but it really does play like a really wacky, bad 80s camp comedy that gets invaded by a slasher kill every 10 minutes, and for that, I appreciate it. I'm glad I watched it again. It's been a long time. Chris is my fellow horror fan. Do you have opinions on The Burning and Sleepaway Camp?
They're both very fun, and yes, they both have not aged very well, but I like them both. And if you want to see a young Jason Alexander, you should watch The Burning because he's in that, and it's so weird. Yeah,
it's really his voice sounds exactly the same, but he looks like he's 12 years old. It's so bizarre. All right, I watched one of my favorite films of all time, streaming on Netflix right now. That's Starship Troopers. I wrote about this in my quarantine stream article this week. I think this is one of the best films ever made, and it's gotten even more upsetting and timely as years have gone on, because I think a lot of people misunderstood what Paul Verhoeven was doing here in 1997, which is take a book that glorifies militaristic fascism and putting in the guise of like science fiction adventure and making it very clear how stupid he thinks those ideas are. The fact that, he casts Denise Richards and Casper Van Dien, soap opera stars, and a bunch of young, pretty people, and shoots like an episode of Beverly Hills 90210, and has characters who are so vapid and so committed to a cause that's clearly fascism and clearly authoritarianism. And the movie is such rabid support of right-wing ideology while making its characters so blank, empty, and hopelessly, stupidly pretty that it becomes this unsettling satire where characters take fist pumping privilege and their enemies being afraid. Where one character in a big exciting hero moment essentially wishes genocide upon his enemy. Doogie Howser, it's not quite Neil Patrick Harris. He's still Doogie Howser at this point. Wears an SS uniform for most of his scenes, as a military officer. And it's really, really funny on two levels because Paul Verhoeven is being intentionally cheesy, intentionally uber patriotic, making this glorified, expensive, glossy B movie, while also like celebrating fascism by making fun of it, which ensures that it ends up looking bad, which is such a crazy combination. Someone gave him this massive budget to make this massive alien science fiction war movie that is even more biting and vicious than RoboCop was, his first breakout film in America. I think Starship Troopers is a straight up masterpiece. I think maybe Doctor Strangelove is the only other major American film to bite the hand that feeds it with such ferocity. I love this film to death. So guys, I want to know around the table, who here has seen Starship Troopers? Is it brilliant? Or am I giving it too much credit?
Yeah, I love Starship Troopers.
Yeah, it pretty much rules.
Yeah, everything you said is dead on. I do think it's funny that when this came out, a lot of critics somehow did not realize it's supposed to be satire, and they were like, "This is terrible." And time has been much kinder to it because it's very obviously satire, but it's great.
Yeah, I saw it in theaters, and it was a great time. I haven't revisited it in many years, so I might have to.
I will say that when I saw it, I was 11 years old, so it was not exactly appropriate for me. And so I watched it because of the really violent action, and also because I was a stupid, horny kid. And oh man, there's nudity in this movie too. And then I had a whole second wave of oh, this movie is better for different reasons.
Yeah, very similar thing with me, Brad. I was roughly the same age when I first saw it. And I thought, man, this is such a cool action movie. It's so violent. Like, it's so ridiculously violent. And when I watched it as a kid, I'm like, man, this violence is awesome. And I watch it as an adult, and I go, oh, it's violent because this is a society where they're going to war against an enemy who they really can't beat, who really has nothing to do with them, and they're going to war and dying these horrible bloody deaths because violence is the only thing that can keep a fascist society alive. Because if you remove violence and war from authoritarianism, the whole system falls apart. So I'm like, oh, the violence actually serves a political purpose. I fucking love this movie. It is so good. And if you haven't seen it in a long time, it is on Netflix right now. HG, have you seen Starship Troopers? I know you read my article because you proofread it for me.
Yes, I know. I haven't seen Starship Troopers. I've seen RoboCop because all my guy friends are like, "You have to watch RoboCop," and RoboCop is good. I can't say that I loved it, and I totally got all of the social commentary that was going into it. So I can't say I'm the biggest Verhoeven fan, but I haven't seen it. But I'll check it out because your article did intrigue me. I didn't realize how much was going into Starship Troopers.
Actually, you should also watch the Arnold Schwarzenegger Total Recall, which is on Netflix right now. That's another really great Verhoeven movie.
Mm.
Although I will say, Jacob, I think you're probably the first person to mention this film and Doctor Strangelove in the same sentence.
I genuinely think they belong in the same conversation. I think they both have similar intent. Okay, I'm going way too long. I watched Tomb Raider, the Angelina Jolie one. Don't watch Tomb Raider, guys. I saw it in cable. I don't know why I watched it. I watched Tomb Raider with commercials. And other than a extremely baby-faced Daniel Craig and a baby-faced Ian Glenn, Jorah Mormont from Game of Thrones, it's just a bad movie. So the only interest I got was saying, oh man, those guys look really, really young compared to their now craggly older selves. Don't watch Tomb Raider.
Wait, if you think that's a bad movie, what do you think of the second one?
Oh, it's even worse. Tomb Raider. I think the Alicia Vikander Tomb Raider is actually pretty okay and pretty good. It's at least better than the Angelina Jolie one, which I think is 10 pounds of crap squeezed into 109 minutes or however long it is. Unsolved Mystery on Netflix. You guys talked about it last week. It's good. I like it a lot. It's everything the original show was, but in the most handsome package imaginable. I think it's a respectful, exciting, really well done true crime stuff, or in the case of the one UFO episode, supernatural paranoia stuff. I loved it. I'm really, really excited for more. And I feel it's weird to be excited about something that is, often so dark and upsetting. But hey, that's true crime for you. I do really respect that it holds back on being excited about the stories it's telling and is respectful about them, which makes it better television for sure.
I have a question for you, Jacob.
Oh yeah, Peter,
I just watched the UFO episode. And one of the things I loved about Unsolved Mysteries when they would do the ghost stuff or the alien stuff is that it felt real. And while I was watching this, I don't think I believed any of these people. They all seemed pretty crazy to me. Like, did they? Were you believing that they believed it, or oh no?
I have very complex feelings about UFOs and aliens. I believe they exist. I believe these people believe this happened to them. I believe they should be listened to and should be heard and should not be like ignored. I wish I could fully believe that it actually happened, but I also don't discount their stories, if that makes sense.
Okay. What else have you been watching?
Last thing, my wife and I have been drunk watching Supermarket Sweep, which hit Netflix, the old early 90s, late 80s game show where people run through a grocery store trying to grab products and fill up their baskets. It is one of the worst things ever made, and I love it so much. I don't recommend watching it sober. I recommend capping off your evening of drinking too much with an episode or 3 of Supermarket Sweep, now on Netflix. And that's it.
Okay. Chris, what have you been watching this week?
I watched The Princess Bride, and I won't say too much about it because I feel like everyone has seen The Princess Bride, but I haven't seen that movie in a long time. I had the Criterion Blu-ray, but I just never got around to watching it. And I just felt like, I'm going to watch this. And it holds up. That is a charming, delightful, romantic, funny film. And the only criticism I'll say about that is the soundtrack. The music is really bad. Like, it's like the whole soundtrack sounds like, I don't know if any of you used to have like a Casio keyboard, but it used to come with like presets, and there was a button called fanfare, and it was just like digital trumpets going like, and this like the whole soundtrack of the movie sounds like someone hitting the fanfare button over and over again. And like a part of me wants someone to do like a fan edit where they somehow remove all that music and put like a good classical music score in there. But beyond that, that movie is delightful. And then after I watched that, I was like in the mood for more movies about, people with swords and stuff like that. So I watched Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, because that's on Hulu right now. And one of my recent quarantine streams is all about this. And I know a lot of people have problems with this movie, and it has problems of its own. Kevin Costner is clearly not trying to do an accent here. I don't know what he's doing, but for all its flaws, I still really enjoy this movie. Alan Rickman is having a ball as the Sheriff of Nottingham. The complete opposite of Princess Bride. The soundtrack to this is so damn good. Michael Kamen did it, and it's just triumphant and sweeping, and it makes you want to like just stand up. It's like a great score, and I dug it. And it's definitely better than like any Robin Hood movie that came after it, like the Russell Crowe one or that recent one with what's his name, Rocket Man.
Taron Egerton.
Yes, he's in it, and like because like they both of those movies, like they're trying to be something completely different. Like they're just trying to take the Robin Hood brand and work it around. Like the Rocket Man one is basically just a remake of The Dark Knight, but with Robin Hood in it. And this one, even though it does have gritty stuff in it, it's still basically a Robin Hood movie, and I have a lot of fun with that. So Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, now streaming on Hulu.
Okay, Ben, what have you been watching?
I watched the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. That is a mouthful of a title. It is a romantic comedy that came out in 2018. It's a Netflix original, and Lily James stars in this. And Jacob, you know how to pronounce the guy's name who played Dario Naharis on Game of Thrones? Is it Michael Huseman? Is it Michelle Huseman? I'm not sure. He's Danish, I believe.
I've always said Michael Huseman. I could be wrong.
Okay, yeah. So he is like the hunky love interest in this. And guys, what a nice movie! What a comforting, just gorgeous countryside little romance. It's a movie that is basically. It's a period piece. It takes place in the aftermath of World War II, and this author receives this letter from this isolated island that the Nazis had taken over and occupied during the war. And after the war, this unconventional literary society formed while the Nazis were there and continued on after the war. And this author begins this correspondence with this hunky guy who has a tragic backstory, and she actually ends up going out there to this island and meeting this ragtag group of people in this literary society. And it's there are some sad moments in here, and it doesn't. I guess to minimize it drastically, it doesn't get too heavy with the Nazi stuff. I'll say that. So if you're looking for like a relatively breezy watch, I think this qualifies. And man, Lily James is just so lovely, and Michael Huseman is just a hunk and a half in this movie. He's wearing, he's bearded and wearing like old torn sweaters and everything, and it's the whole movie. Just I wrote about it in the quarantine stream, so you can read about more about it there. But I said that it sort of feels like it's like the movie equivalent of curling up in a seaside cottage to read your favorite novel. And that's really what this reminds me of. I think it's also like one of the most beautifully shot Netflix original movies. So that is, and get ready for this title again, the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. So check that out if you're interested. AC, did you see this? I feel like you saw it a long time ago, right?
Yeah, I saw it when it came out. My cousins came over to watch it with me because they're very excited about the new Lily James movie. Lily James has a big following amongst young millennial women, I guess. And I saw it and I thought it was cute and sweet. But my big problem with this is that I think Glenn Powell, who is the sort of the guy that Lily James' character leaves for Michael Huseman, is just so much more charismatic than Michael Huseman. I don't like Michael Huseman in any role that I've seen him in. I remember when he replaced replaced the other Ed Skrein as Dario. Yeah, in Game of Thrones. I was like, wow, this guy is just like blandly handsome, and I feel like he's been blandly handsome in everything else I've seen him in, especially in this movie. But other than that, it's sweet. I just think that Glenn Powell is just so much more charismatic. I'm like, why did she leave him? He's so much more interesting.
Yep. So that's on Netflix right now. I also watched The Exorcist for the first time, which is streaming on HBO Max. And this is one that's been on my list of shame for years and years.
The first time? Really?
I know, yeah.
That is shocking. Not to be one of those guys who's like, you've never seen, but that is shocking.
Yeah, I just finally got around to checking this out. And man, what a movie. It's, I don't know if I loved it. I feel like so much of this movie has like seeped into pop culture where I absorbed, most of it before I ever actually saw the movie itself. So that's obviously like on me and not on the movie. But when this thing opened, when the movie opened, or begins, I should say, not opened like back in 1973 when it came out, but when it begins, I was like, wait a second, is this The Exorcist? Because there's so much of the movie. It's probably like a solid 30 minutes or something before anything really, truly creepy starts to happen. And the cinematography in the very beginning of the movie is like, Max von Sydow is like out in, I think he's in Iraq, in like the Iraqi desert, doing like an archaeological dig. And it looks just like Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like the, characters framed against the sun and like an orange hue across some of the shots and stuff. And I mean, Raiders of the Lost Ark came out in 81, so it was like almost a decade after this movie. So I was like, I wonder if Spielberg was like purposefully paying homage to that when he made Raiders, because I'd never heard about The Exorcist being a potential influence on Raiders, but it may have happened. But yeah, I guess spoilers for The Exorcist real quick. I just want to say one thing about this movie. So I'll just want to give people one moment to pause or fast forward just like 1 minute if you don't want to know anything about this. But Max von Sydow is not in the movie that much at all. I thought he was the main character. That was the one, like, that was the biggest shock to me, was I thought he was going to be the main guy, and he shows up at the very beginning for 5 minutes, if that, and then at the very end he rolls in to like perform the actual exorcism, and he's on screen for 10 minutes at that point. And I was just like sort of blown away, because my entire life I just thought that he was the lead of this movie, and he is definitely not. I mean, I think he has top billing next to Ellen Burstyn, but man, I was very surprised by that. So William Friedkin, really good director. Oh, and also the editing in this movie is nuts. I'm sure this has been said by everybody who's ever seen this film, but the editing, I just was, it really goes a long way toward making the movie feel really unsettling, because it seems like every scene just abruptly ends and cuts to something else, in a way that where the editing almost calls attention to itself. It's not something you see in modern movies. So I don't know if anybody here has anything to say specifically about the editing of The Exorcist.
I have a quick question, Ben. Do you know which version you watched? Because not recently, but they eventually released the thing called the version you've never seen before, which cut in some deleted scenes, and it also added some stuff that I don't think the movie needs. Like, it adds like goofy subliminal faces in places that they weren't there before. Do you know what version you watched?
That is a really good question, because I feel like I did see subliminal faces, but
well, those are in the original. All right, here's how you can tell. Is there a scene where the Reagan, the girl, comes down the stairs upside down, like, and really quickly? Is that like, it's called like the spider walk? Was that in the version you saw?
You know, now that you say that, that was one of the images that I think I had absorbed from pop culture, and I was expecting that to be in the movie, and I completely forgot about it, and it was not in the version that is on HBO.
Yeah, so then you saw the theatrical one, which I honestly, even though that spider walk is very cool, I do think the theatrical version is the superior version.
Okay, good. All right. Okay, so that's on HBO Max right now if you want to check that out. And then my wife and I also watched the first 2 episodes of The Babysitter's Club, which is the new, I guess, take on the classic property, the new adaptation of the children's novel series, and this is on Netflix. And she grew up reading these books. I did not. I was more of like I read Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys and that kind of stuff. And I think HT, we were talking in the Slack channel the other day, Boxcar Children. That was another big one for me. But I did not. But yeah, I didn't grow up reading any of the Babysitter's Club, but she, you know, was very familiar with those. She read a bunch of those books as a you know, when she was growing up, and I had heard good things about this show. I was kind of hoping that it would be like a slightly younger version of Never Have I Ever, the other Netflix series that came out earlier this year that I really enjoyed. And it's not as good as that. It's a whole different thing. It definitely seems like it's aimed toward a younger audience. But it's fine. It's charming. Alicia Silverstone shows up in at least the first episode, and there are a couple Clueless references in there that I thought were like, you know, a little eye rolling, but also a little amusing at the same time. So Babysitter's Club, if you're looking for something incredibly low key and with, you know, very, very little stakes, you can check that out on Netflix.
I do have to ask you, Ben, are you planning on watching more episodes?
I think so, just because it's, you know, the episodes are like, 25 minutes or something like that. And we'll probably throw them on, you know, at the end of the night when we don't quite have enough time to watch anything else and feel like, you know, to squeeze something else in before we have to go to bed. Like, oh yeah, we just got 20 minutes. Let's just throw one of these on, that kind of thing. I don't think we're going to be watching it like with any sort of, you know, high anticipation or like, all right, it's Tuesday, we got to watch another one of these episodes. But I think we'll just sort of throw it on when the time fits out for us.
Fair enough. A couple weeks ago, or maybe it was last week, we talked about Floor is Lava. Brad, you have finally seen the show. What do you think?
I've watched a couple episodes, and it's really fun. I'm not the biggest fan of Rutledge Wood as the host. He's a little obnoxious, and like sometimes I just want him to shut up. But yeah, what I do love about this show is the players on the show are kind of goobers, and like I don't really like any of them very much. And so when I watch them and I see them fall, it brings me so much joy. I laugh at when they fail these like tasks and stuff, because they're obviously hamming it up and they're saying silly things, and like just the way they cheer each other on feels so phony. Like it doesn't even feel like genuine game show excitement stuff. It just seems like they're really trying to put on a show for the camera, and I'm sure they've been instructed to do so. But it just makes like the challenge of seeing them jump and like just slam into these objects and fall into the lava so much more entertaining. And I was laughing so hard while watching this show. It's entertaining for that very reason.
I feel like they have earpieces where they're being fed lines.
Yeah,
the show
it really does feel like that sometimes. It's it's very cheesy, but it's too good of a physical competition in just how funny it is to watch them fail and figure stuff out to actually, you know, for me to hate it. I love it because of how annoying it is sometimes.
Yeah. What else have you been watching?
I also watched the Smithson Library and Pizza Milkshake Organization, which is a sequel to the it's a fake thing. I was just making fun of that Guernsey literary title.
I like that though, Brad. I would absolutely watch that.
I rewatched Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story. I wrote about this for a quarantine stream a little while back, and it made me want to rewatch it, and I found out that my girlfriend hadn't seen it yet. And so we sat down to give it a watch, and I love this movie so much. It is it's one of the rare great parodies that we've seen in the past couple decades. It's kind of an art that has gone by the wayside a little bit since Friedberg and Seltzer ruined it with Date Movie and Epic Movie and all that other trash. But this is such a good parody, and it is it's the reason that a lot of music industry biopics like Bohemian Rhapsody and stuff like that have been ruined, because it mocks all of the formulaic elements of those movies. This one really digs into Ray and Walk the Line, and has John C. Reilly playing a Johnny Cash kind of folk rock singer guy. And it has just an awesome cast of people in it. Jenna Fisher and Kristen Wiig and Tim Meadows. And there's just small bit parts from people everywhere. And some of them, this movie was made long enough ago now that some of the people that are in it weren't like full on super famous yet. And yeah, it's just so good. It's so funny. It's on Netflix now, but if you can, get a hold of the unrated edition, because that version is even funnier in my opinion.
Very cool. That movie is so good. If you have not seen Walk Hard, go see Walk Hard. When it came out, I was in San Francisco, running Slash Film, and John C. Reilly actually came to town not only to do interviews, but he actually performed a concert as Dewey Cox in a small rock venue, and it's one of the greatest things I ever saw.
That is amazing. I'm so jealous of that.
The moment he started, it wasn't just like him performing songs from the movie. He was in character from start to finish.
That's awesome.
Yeah. What else?
So while I work, I put stuff on in the background. I have the TV on, and it's always stuff that I've seen before, because I don't want to be distracted by it. And usually if I'm watching something new, I want to pay attention to it. And I decided to put on Entourage, because I have HBO Max now. And even though I've already had HBO Max, it just happened to catch my eye. And I was just like, you know what? It's been a long time since I've watched Entourage, and I'm going to put it on. And gosh, this show has aged very, very poorly, for mostly because of the kind of comedy. It was always a very douche bro show to begin with, but it is full of so much homophobia and transphobia. And man, everyone knew Ari Gold was a total asshole, while this show was on. But the stuff now is just it's even more crass and inappropriate now in the age of Me Too, because the things he says and just how he talks about and treats like the women on this show, it is, man, it's rough to watch. And the only reason I'm
but isn't he supposed to be one of those characters? Like, isn't he?
Sure, but like it's harder to watch now. And I'm still watching it just because the reason I'm watching it to begin with is because I love the showbiz stuff on the show so much. It's just like all the cameos and just like the storylines that they go through. They're very simple, and like it's not smart TV by any means, but I like the seeing people like James Cameron show up. They have so many filmmakers that play themselves, and so many actors and actresses, and it's fun to see them do these like exaggerated versions of themselves throughout the show. But yeah, it's a lot of the stuff has not aged very well in the show.
Yeah. The film industry stuff can be so smart at times, and so like clever, and probably too inside baseball for a lot of the people watching the show.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of inside baseball stuff. And one thing I've always thought so weird about this show is that like they have like substitutes for certain people in Hollywood and certain like situations and things like that. Like they talk about real people and they exist in here, but then like they have a character that is a stand-in for Harvey Weinstein and is very clearly supposed to be Harvey Weinstein, but it would seem to imply that Harvey Weinstein doesn't exist in the Entourage world.
I wonder if they approached him about playing himself and he was like, no.
It's a good thing they didn't. That would have made it even worse.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to HT. What have you been watching this week?
I've been watching an anime series called Japan Sinks 2020. It's an adaptation by Masaki Yuasa of a 1973 disaster novel by Japanese writer Sakio Komatsu. And it's about Japan after going through a series of earth-shattering earthquakes starts to sink into the ocean. And it's actually a story that's been adapted several times in Japanese film and television. And now Masaki Yuasa, who has directed such feature films as Mind Game and is known for series like Devilman Crybaby, is made into an anime series, which is really, really harrowing piece of work. It's tells us the story of, you know, the sinking of Japan from the point of view of a family that is on the ground when Japan starts to sink, and they try to survive and just kind of make their way through the horrible disaster, while trying to figure out like what is happening, and the information that is not really, whether it's trustworthy or not. And it's really beautifully animated and has such a grounded approach, despite being despite having so much spectacle. And I will say that Misaki Uesa's animation style is kind of hard to get used to for a lot of people, because it's not typical of anime style. That his character animation is a little bit more fluid and kind of almost a little like, it looks a little bizarre sometimes, but it is just gorgeously animated, and especially in the wider shots of the actual disasters and the spectacle and stuff. But the thing that draws you in is the story of this one family. It's a 4-person family that is trying to get by and dealing with several tragedies on top of the other. And it's very intense, very, very harrowing, and a little bit hard to watch, especially during a pandemic, and like a kind of feeling like this, because it's set in contemporary times, and draws a lot on just like social media and our current media cycle and everything like that. It feels almost a little bit too true to like the current state of affairs, despite, you know, not being exactly the same. But it's really, really tremendous stuff, and I recommend it, even if you don't like anime. It's called Japan Sinks 2020, and it's on Netflix now. And one other thing I watched is Columbus, which I rewatched. It is the 2017 drama directed by Kogonada, starring John Cho and Haley Lu Richardson. And I wrote about this in a recent quarantine stream, and how it's a movie that I really liked when I watched it, especially for how it calls back to some of my favorite films, like the Before trilogy and Before Sunset. And it's about these two people. One, a son of a renowned architecture, who finds himself stranded in Columbus, Indiana, after his father falls ill, and Casey, a young woman who's a big architecture enthusiast and kind of stuck in her own dead-end life, and how they meet and have the sort of kinship. And it is kind of a pseudo romance. It flirts with romance and doesn't exactly go all the way in that, but it's this really beautifully shot, serene film. And Kogonada comes from the video essay world, so you can really tell that he puts his all into the visuals and the blocking of this film, especially in how he uses the town of Columbus, which is a sort of known as a modern architecture mecca. And I wrote about this in a recent quarantine stream, talking about how I really liked this movie when it came out, and I was like, oh yeah, it was great, and I felt like it didn't make that much of an impression on me. But as I came away from it, it was just one of those movies that really stayed with me for some reason, and I kept thinking about it a lot, and I regretted just not putting it on my top 10 of 2017, just because it's a movie that, you know, just really lingered with me, and I really enjoyed it. So Columbus, great movie, and it's streaming on Criterion Channel right now.
Very cool. Okay, let's move on to what we've been eating. Brad, what kind of crap have you been eating this week?
Well, a couple, I guess, not so healthy things. But the first thing, which is awesome that I got to do, was I mentioned I was in Kansas City, and Kansas City has really good barbecue. In fact, they have what is considered one of the best barbecue joints in the world. It's called Joe's Kansas City Barbecue. Anthony Bourdain named it as one of the places you have to eat before you die. And I got what they're known for, which is the Z-Man sandwich. It is a sandwich that has delicious, wonderful barbecue brisket on it, and cheese and onion rings, and it is just incredible. The meat is so flavorful and tender. Their sauce is delicious. It also comes with these amazing seasoned fries, and I was so happy that I was able to go to my way to try it while we were down there. Easily one of the best barbecue sandwiches at barbecue in general that I have had. And next time we get on to visit, I'll definitely have to try something else from their menu. Oh, and they have really good white cheddar macaroni and cheese, too, that I got as a side as well.
Yeah, I saw a picture of the sandwich on your Instagram, and it looks amazing.
Yeah, and it really is. Just I was skeptical just because you never know, and it's been hyped up so much. But it was every single bite I had was delicious.
Brad, this is the place that I go every year when I go with my wife to Kansas City for her work trip, and I recently discovered, I think within the last year, that you can ship food from Joe's Kansas City to anywhere in the country. And over Christmas break, I shipped some stuff to my dad. I think it was pulled pork or maybe brisket, I don't recall, but it is just as good shipped as it is in the place, which I thought there was no way that would actually be the case, but I had some and it is unreal. And now I'm like so thrilled to know that whenever I want, I can just like, for special occasions, it's kind of expensive because you have to pay for, it's like $80 or something to get some shipped to you, but it's, man.
Wait, how much do you get for $80?
I don't remember. I'll have to like pull up the actual page. I don't want to like misquote and mislead anybody listening to this, but I mean, if you're into
how many meals did you make out of it is what I'm asking.
Oh God. I mean, at least 2 or 3. And I don't know, whatever it was worth it. It was worth the money because it's, as Brad says, and as I've said many times, it's the best barbecue I've ever had in my entire life. So if you are interested in that, Brad, I would definitely recommend, you don't have to wait until you go back to Kansas City again.
Yeah, that's good to know actually, because I would like to try that out and see if it does hold up. That was my first question too, and I'm glad you mentioned that it would, because I wouldn't expect it to be as good if you had it sent to you.
Yeah, and they sell that fry seasoning individually, so you can get that. I bought that and just like put it on fries that I make, from the grocery store here, and it really like takes them up a notch. And then also Joe's has like dirty rice, I think they call it, which is like sausage and it's like a little bit spicy and it's really good. I ordered a side of that and had that shipped as well, and that is just as good, delivered as it is in the store. So
we did pick up their sauce and fry seasoning from the location that we picked up the food from, so we definitely have that. But yeah, I'm gonna have to give that a shot once I'm feeling the craving again. And then I found new roasted Parmesan and roasted garlic Pringles. Pretty basic as far as Pringles flavors go. I've had other garlic Parmesan like potato chips before, kettle cooked. And the flavor's still pretty good. It's the garlic is a little bit overpowering, but not in a way where it's like it completely makes the chip bad or anything like that. But expect to have really bad breath after you have some of these chips. And then, do you guys remember Koala Yummies?
No.
So there was these cookies when I was a kid. They're kind of like a thin, not quite wafer style cookie, but and they were shaped like koalas, and they had chocolate or vanilla cream filling inside them. They don't have that brand name anymore, but if you go to like different grocery stores and they have an Asian food section, they have the Asian version of it, which is they're called Koala's March cookies. And I found out recently that they have other flavors, like they have strawberry cream and whatnot. And a new one just came out that has mango cream. And when my girlfriend was visiting another person in her family recently, they went to an Asian market and she found them there. And I tried them, and they are very, very good. I wasn't sure if the mango would mix well with the cookie and like the chocolatey style kind of cream, but they're very, very good. So if you can find them either in an Asian market nearby where you are, or just check out the right aisle in your grocery store and see if they have them there. They're good cookies.
Okay, let's move on to what we've been playing. HT, what have you been playing this week?
I've been playing the first few episodes of the Sandman Audible series. This is the audio drama that is debuting on Audible on July 15th, and I got a preview of the whole thing, but I've just only listened to the first couple episodes because it's very long. It adapts the first 3 volumes of the Sandman graphic novel series by Neil Gaiman, and it's is narrated by Gaiman himself, and stars James McAvoy as Morpheus, aka Dream, aka the Sandman, and all the other terms that he has. And I had read the Sandman graphic novels a while ago, like maybe 7 years ago, and they're fantastic. I've always been a huge Neil Gaiman fan, and the Sandman graphic novels are just disturbing and fantastical, of the highest nature, and just kind of feels like very Gaiman unleashed, especially in the design of the Sandman, which is actually based off of Gaiman himself. And the Audible adaptation actually does a really good job of adapting the graphic novel series, despite being a audio drama retelling of graphic novels, which is something you wouldn't think would work very well. But because Neil Gaiman already has such a rich story, and that is able to be kind of retold in more narrating form, it really works, although it kind of dials down some of the more horror grotesque elements of the graphic novels, which I think you can't really replicate unless you have the visuals. It just plays off more as the high fantasy story that it kind of becomes later on. But I could say I missed some of that more unnerving parts, because I feel like it was hard to capture it, especially in such a dense story as this. But I liked it, except I will say, I think that James McAvoy is kind of miscast in this role. I think he's a very, very great actor, and he gives a good performance here. But I just imagine Morpheus as having a much deeper voice, like Benedict Cumberbatch, Devil's Deep, and so I felt like he is just a little bit more. Yeah, even like in his vocal performance, he just kind of always reads to me as like the hero. So, and like, Morpheus is the hero, he's the protagonist, but I just feel like he doesn't have that inhuman factor that I kind of imagined from the character. But has anyone here read the Sandman graphic novels? I feel like Jacob definitely has.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It is. It's as good as his reputation suggests. I'm very skeptical about the audio version, because I think when you deal with characters who are literally walking embodiments of ideas, taking away the visual and relying on a voice to capture like characters who are more than gods, I'm not so sure how ready I am to accept that for this guy's storytelling. I feel like Sandman's the kind of thing that feels like it can only be a comic, the way it marries visuals and ideas and Gaiman's dialogue. And like you said, how does James McAvoy, who has a lovely voice, capture a character who is intended to be the embodiment of dreams? I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure if I'm ready for this, but I'm going to give it a shot.
I think you'll like it. I do think that it doesn't quite capture exactly what made Sandman so brilliant. But Neil Gaiman gives this really storybook style narration that does make it feel more sort of fairy tale and fantasy, which isn't bad, but is an element of the Sandman graphic novels, but can't quite capture it. But I think it's still good, and it's quite a loyal adaptation. It even has dialogue that's lifted straight from the graphic novels.
So how does this work? Like, do you need to be a subscriber to Audible to listen to this?
Yes, I think, it's an Audible original. I think you have to be a subscriber to Audible. You can also, I think, get it on Amazon, which through like its Audible partnership. But it's premiering exclusively on audible.com.
Okay, that brings us to the end of today's Slash Film Daily. You can find more of all of our work at slashfilm.com. You can find this podcast in iTunes, Google, Overcast, Spotify, all the popular podcast apps. Please feel free to send your feedback, questions, comments, concerns to us at peter@slashfilm.com. And if you have time, head on over to iTunes. Give us a rating, write us a review, tell your friends, spread the word, and we will see you on Monday.
Peter.
It's the weekend. Are you ready? What?
Peter, this is very important, Peter. It's very, very important. I've opened the gargantuan book of insult, offense, and effrontery, sharp retorts, riposte, cost clips, implied put-downs by Louis A. Safian. I hope the page number 7. Page number 7, introduction. Repartee has been defined as saying what you think after becoming a departee, saying as quick as a flash what you didn't say the next morning. Everyone, at one time or another, has had occasion to echo the familiar lamentation. Backward, turn backward, O time, in your flight. I just thought of a wisecrack I needed last night. How often have you felt the need, at a given moment, for a whimsical wisecrack, or a waggish quip, to put a spark in your conversation? Why be caught with your gags down? You can't win in the battle of wits unless you are properly armed with a repartee of rapid-fire repartee, a capsule caricature, a salty sally, or a snappy comeback. The unabashed purpose of this compilation is to enable you, at the drop of a gag, to place your comic, laconic stamps on the idiosyncrasies of the diverse human specimens of the human race. I have endeavored to include the wit of absurdity, analogy, burlesque, cynicism, drollery, epigram, fastidiousness, ridicule, thought play, wordplay, and urbanity. The breezy one-liner, to which I have adhered in this volume, gets your point across in a headline form in this age of high speed, sums up a situation in a nutshell, and adds attention-winning punch to your comments. The secret of the success of the epigram is found in its definition, a grain of truth in the twinkling of an eye. The so-called insult gag is, in essence, an epigrammic wisecrack concerning people's nature, conduct, or appearance.
Jacob, let's stop. This is going too long.
TV and nightclub comedians, who are masters of the insult gag, indulge in their heart's content in an acidulous wit and verbal brickbats, bombshells, and blackjacks, with the assurance that no one in their audience identifies himself as their target. Jonathan Swift expressed this skillfully in the definition of satire, a sort of glass wherein beholders do generally discover everyone's face but their own.
What's a salty Sally?
Aside from its reputation for witticism, the insult gag helps at times to blow off steam and get a pet peeve off one's chest. There is an old saying, it takes all kinds of people to make a world. In our human relations, many of our irritations and annoyances spring from other people's behavior, dress, or appearance. It often becomes a necessity to call a spade, without stubbing our toes on one.
Wow.
Edged with the sharp barbs of truth, the thesaurus of sizzling flip quickles, mad quibs, bright slayings, and tongue whippers offers you a well-stocked arsenal for the fullest expression of your critical faculties. Alphabetically arranged according to the target of your pointed dart, it is a ready reference for assassinating X's, burying boars, demolishing stuffed shirts, knocking the knockers, putting the kibosh on the kibitzers, promoting the pompous, shrinking egotists' heads, and squelching the pest. So, for your innocent and not-so-innocent pleasure, I'll offer this supermarket of sweet and not-so-sweet one-liners, with which you can add luster to your reputation as a wit, a clever epigrammist, and an astute caricaturist. The pins are here in abundance to prick a lot of balloons and spoons.
God,
with all this ammunition, you can now crack the quips and let them fall where they may. May your tongue be your sword, and may it never grow rusty.
He's just gonna
With my best gradings, I am very tartly yours, Louis A. Safian.
I just don't even. I'm so mad, but I also think this is so funny. Like
I missed some of that. Can you start from the beginning again?
Okay.
No.
I'm pretty sure some of those things are on Urban Dictionary as sexual favors.
Repartee has been defined as saying.
That's it.
No. Fun fact: Hamilton, I think, used this book for his quotes, right?
Repartee has been defined